Hey guys, on the 8th of March, I went to a place that is full of history, sea breeze, and some seriously underrated vibes. Port Arthur, which is Lüshun Port in Chinese. Back in 2024, I watched a movie called The Hill 203, which depicted how the Imperial Japanese Army conquered the Port Arthur in Russo-Japanese War, which is a good movie, by the way. I highly recommend you to watch it. It's pretty touching. I quickly got interested in the history context, which is the Russo-Japanese War. So I decided why not go to Port Arthur to check it out for a bit. So my trip begins.
Hi guys, today I'm going to Port Arthur, which is Lüshun City, and I'm going to record my vlog about the the basic monuments of during the Russian Russo-Japanese War in that city, and I'm in the train departing from Beijing, and I'm heading to the Port Arthur now. See you tomorrow.
Well, this is how the train looks like inside. But I soon realized that this train trip was not that good.
Guys, I just can't sleep, and it's too noisy. You know, the tracks and the train are making, and also too many people are snoring besides me. God damn it. Now it's a bit quiet because we are stopped in a random small stop. I think it's the phone said we are. My cell phone said we are in the Shanghai Guan district, and the weather is 36 Fahrenheit.
After I get there, I was really tired because I didn't sleep the whole night. But due to my excitement and my nervousness, because I only took one day off for this trip, I soon became energetic and head towards the entrance of the station. Fun fact, actually, Port Arthur, which is Lüshun Port, is not a city anymore. It became part of Dalian city years ago. So when I got to the train station of Dalian, I have to take a subway for like an hour and take a taxi there. So it's pretty annoying. I have to spend 2 hours to get to a city that is not relevant, but then I have to take another long trip to Port Arthur. So if you want to go there, you have to take this train first to Dalian, and then you have to take another transportation to Port Arthur. You can't directly take train to Port Arthur, so it's pretty annoyed though. After me and my mother got out of the train station, we encountered a taxi driver, and he was advertising us to take his taxi, and in exchange, he can take us wherever we want in Port Arthur, and we only have to give him like 20 bucks and approximately 140 yuan. You know, Port Arthur is a small district in a small city, so the price level is super cheap, I think. And me and my mother decided to take his ride anyways. I was only expected to see the monuments and remains of the Russo-Japanese War, but I soon realized that there are actually more interesting things to see. For example, the first interesting building I encountered is a monument built by the uh, Russians at the end of the World War II. You see, during the Second Sino-Japanese War, the Imperial Japan set an puppet regime in Manchuria, or we say northwest China, which is called Manchukuo. And at the end of the war, the Soviet invaded this puppet regime and gave it back to China. And they built a monument to, we say, remember the friendship of Chinese and Soviet Union, and which is this monument. The first building the taxi driver take us, which is relevant to the Russo-Japanese War, is the Russo-Japanese War archive located near the train station. There are many photos, documents, and artifacts about Russo-Japanese War and First Sino-Japanese War. But I had to only spend 40 minutes there because I have to go to many places, and I only have one day in Port Arthur, so it's a bit of shame. And so I took many photos and videos, but I won't show a lot of them. So because if I show them all, I have to spend like 2 hours to show a lot of them. Yeah, and I'll pick some really interesting ones, and I'm sure you're gonna like it. Hey, this is a Russian cannon located just outside the archive. Pretty cool, huh? The first three photos I show you are the katanas and sabers from the Japanese side. And I don't know why I shoot these photos using my film cameras because I have my phone. I was too dumb to do so. The first three photos I show you are the katanas and sabers from the Japanese side. And I don't know why I shoot these photos using my film cameras because I have my phone. I was too dumb to do so. On the right, it is literature to remember the dead Japanese soldiers, and on the upward side is ornaments from the Japanese shrines, and on the right, it is a vintage film camera from the journalist in the Russo-Japanese War. And as a fan of vintage film cameras, I like it so much, man. I will give this archive 5 stars for only because of this artifact. Yeah, not gonna lie. On the right, it is literature to remember the dead Japanese soldiers, and on the upward side is ornaments from the Japanese shrines, and on the right, it is a vintage film camera from the journalist in the Russo-Japanese War. And as a fan of vintage film cameras, I like it so much, man. I will give this archive 5 stars for only because of this artifact. Yeah, not gonna lie.
So here we are at the Port Arthur, and we have a museum that talks. What talks about the actual history of the battle of the Russo-Japanese War. So here's the Japan. The Japanese soldiers are going to our front line, and the Japanese bikes, you see. And also, they are the Russian side, they're the generals. And this is the ruling class. You can see the Nicholas II, the Tsar of the Russian Empire. This is the picture of the Russian side using cavalry to transport troops and the Siberian Railroad. This is a picture of Nicholas II farewell to the frontline soldiers. Yeah, here's another picture. Here's the full scene of the Port Arthur Lüshun Port in 1903. And here's a boat launching torpedoes from Russian side.
This is a video recorded in the archive, which is the museum I mentioned in the last recorded video. And you can see that it's a short documentary, or I say, a weird combination of AI generated voices and stole the cuts of YouTube videos and some online photographs about the Russo-Japanese War. And pretty interesting though, and you gotta check this out.
Holy crap, guys. So we are at the first floor of the museum, and it's just a showcase of the things that Russians have. So here's the sandbox, a map of Port Arthur. I think let's discover it. Wow. Wait, it's not working. Damn, boy. Well, it's a shell from the Russian battleship, 152 millimeters. And here is the like the oil tank of the Mosin rifle from Russia. Maybe the Russian viewers know this general. I don't know how to say this in English. And here is the Russian. Is that Santa Maria? Here, take a look. And here's the horn. The troops charging with the sound of it. And here's a saber, I think. Yeah, this is the. You guys must familiar with this guy. This is the head court, the boss of the Russian HQ in Manchuria. Oh, here's a knife of a Russian general. Here's another Russian general. There's a Russian Empire's knife from 1896. Well, here's the news from depicting the death of the Russian general Makarov, I think. How do you say that? Well, this is the bomb they put under the water. That it's a picture shot it in 2020 in Japan. This is the Russian shell in earlier than 1904 and the Russian mines earlier than 1904. Here's some basic ordnance equipment. Check this out, guys. This is the Russian code. That's how thousands of Russian troops wearing in the cold Manchuria. In 1905, the 1st of January, the Russians surrendered, I think. Oh, this is the basic important events in the Russo-Japanese War. These are the medals and the bowl made of bronze. And maybe you can recall those Russian medals. Interesting, huh? And the Balkanors. Yes, those. And those shells. And oh yeah, sword. Russian army using these. A Russian general which was killed in Port Arthur. Oh, this fort we're going to see later. And this general was killed by a Russian bombard. Oh yes, also the knives. Well, this is a part from the Russian battleship. Yeah, take a look at it. Gosh. Oh, this is the Russian Ordnance Factory introduction.
Look at these, guys. These are shells from Russians and Japanese. They are rusted because weathering from time to time. We had to leave the archive due to time restrictions. Next, the taxi driver took us to a small square, and it has many, many buildings. The first building we encountered is a museum called the Port Arthur Museum. The taxi driver told us it was one of the three biggest museums in China, and now it isn't. And from there, we saw many, many artifacts, and you can see porcelains in Qing Dynasty and bronze artifacts in spring and autumn period. It's a long range of time. And I will show some of the pictures I took. This is a carved Buddha, and I think it's really beautiful. And you can see that from the black and white film I shot. It's pretty amazing, huh? More and more interesting artifacts. This is how the museum outside looks like. This is another tower built by the Soviet Union. And what's different is that it has some carved marbles on it. This is the site of the headquarters of the Japanese Kwanton Army. Kwanton Army is a name that describes the Japanese army in Manchuria or the northeastern China in the Second Sino-Japanese War and World War II. Next, the taxi driver took us to a fort by Russians, or let's say a hill for artillery to deploy. And I thought we were scammed because there are little actual cannons remains, and it was constructed to become a patriotic education center for Chinese students. I literally don't know why. I think I was scammed totally. Not gonna lie, bro.
Guys, I'm at the West Sun Palace Fort. I don't know if the translate is correct or not, but the Japanese and the Russian army deployed their artillery in this place. You see here. Look at this cannon. Oh crap. You can see this view down there. It's a bit dangerous, huh? Wow. Holy moly. Uh-huh. No. 不是后建的，不是后建的。Look at these cannons from Russia. Holy crap.
Next is the most important and exciting part for me. We went to Hill 203, which I mentioned this hill in the beginning of our YouTube video. During the Russo-Japanese War, Russians rarely deploy their fleet outside Port Arthur. This is because Russians are inferior in battleship numbers, and by doing so, the Japanese are hard to attack the fleet inside Port Arthur. But by conquering Hill 203, Japanese can attack the fleet inside Port Arthur by deploying artilleries. But Japanese soldiers gain heavy loss. This is because Russians deployed grenades and barbed wire, most importantly, machine guns to defend themselves. And these are the weapons that Japanese soldiers rarely encountered in previous battles. Let's see the views on Hill 203. But I have to mention, gosh, it's a huge, long climbing job for me. This is a pretty big mountain, not gonna lie. It took me like half an hour to get to the top of this hill. But after I got up, I think it was worth it. This monument built in recent years in order to remember the Sino-Japanese friendship. Pretty cool, huh?
Hey guys, we're finally at the monument of the Hill 203. Well, in this battle, the Japanese army defeated the Russian army and put their artillery on this hill, and they bombarded the the fleet in the Port Arthur of the Russian fleet, and it is the decisive battle. You see here, monument. It's too tired because it's so high. The altitude is too high, and if we don't allow cars to come up, it's a pity, huh?
Let's watch the photos I've taken and listen to the Imperial Japanese Army's music in the Russo-Japanese War era. Tekiwa Ikuman, which is in English means there's millions of enemies. Later, we went to the prison of Port Arthur. It was first built by the Russians, and then when Japanese conquered Port Arthur, they used it to lock down the Chinese and Korean patriots. What's interesting about this prison is that it once locked the Korean patriots, An Jung-gun, and it was the one who killed the Japanese Prime Minister Ito Hirobumi in 1909. Next, we went to the final place related to Russo-Japanese War, which is the North Fort of Dongjiguan Mountain. This place was depicted in the movie KO 2032 because you know the the Russians used barbed wires and machine guns to defeat the Japanese army, and Japanese had to use big cannons in order to bomb and destroy this fort. And the Russian army and Japanese army both fought bravely in this battle, not gonna lie.
So we are now here in the, let's see, north fort of Dongjiguan Mountain. The Russian army built several secret bunkers. See there, secret bunkers, and to defeat the Japanese army. And you see here. This is the Russian troops' machine gun position. Look at this machine gun position. And this monument was built in 1916. After more than 10 years after the Japanese won the Russo-Japanese War. And they built a monument here to celebrate it. And here, you can see the cannons, big cannons, Russian cannons.
After visiting the prison, we went to the train station of Chinese Eastern Railroad. It's a building based on the Russian architecture style. It's pretty cool. At the end of the day, we went to the seaside of Port Arthur. Hearing the laugh of children and the sound of breeze and sea, it's hard to imagine that 120 years ago there was a huge battle in Port Arthur. Well, I think that's the end of this video. But before you go, I'll show you the photos and with the song named The Hills of Manchuria from Russian. Here we go.
Подошла, сумрак на землю лег, тонут во мгле пустынные сопки, тучей закрыт восток. Здесь под землей наши герои спят, песню над ними ветер поет, и звезды с небес глядят. То не залп полей долетел, это гром вдали прогремел, и опять кругом все спокойно, все молчит в тишине ночной. Спите, бойцы, спите спокойным сном, пусть вам приснятся нивы родные, отчий далекий дом. Пусть погибли вы в боях с врагами, подвиг ваш к борьбе нас зовет. Кровью народной омытое знамя мы понесем вперед. Мы пойдем навстречу новой жизни, сбросим бремя рабских оков, и не забудут народ и отчизна доблесть своих сынов. Спите, бойцы, слава навеки вам, нашу отчизну, край наш родимый, не покорить врагам. Ночь, тишина, лишь галян шумит. Спите, герои, память о вас Родина-мать хранит. Спите, герои, память о вас Родина-мать хранит.
In conclusion, this trip to Port Arthur is a huge, important, and happy experience for me. And as China is giving free visas to many countries, I suggest you guys really go to China and go to Port Arthur to check out this beautiful small district in Dalian city and check out the the history of this city. You know, the Russo-Japanese War, the Sino-Japanese War, so on and so on. The taxi driver told me that the history of Port Arthur is the half of the modern Chinese history. I don't know if it is an exaggeration, but you get my point. It's a pretty good place to visit. And see you in the next video, guys.